What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to more Let's Play Destiny. In the last episode, after having finished the Grasp of Avarice dungeon, we continued our quest for the Gjallarhorn exotic rocket launcher. Now, finishing that dungeon, especially solo, is by far the hardest part of this entire quest. But we're going to be finishing the quest today nonetheless and getting ourselves this rocket launcher, which is going to be coming in a lot of handy in the future. Now, before we head into this lost sector, let me just remind you of what step we're on really quickly. We're on step 3, which is collect Wolfpack rounds by defeating powerful Fallen in the Cosmodrome. Now, heading on into this lost sector, there are actually multiple powerful Fallen, quote-unquote, multiple Fallen with orange and or yellow health bars that we're going to be encountering in here, although it might take 2 runs through this lost sector to actually get it done. It is by far the most efficient way of doing so. So here's one right here in this servitor. We get a Wolfpack round immediately for doing that. There's another servitor that's going to be coming up here in a moment that we'll also be able to kill. And I think another one even further down before we even get to the boss room. So I think we'll at least get 4 as we make our way through here. And I'm just going to use my my submachine gun to get through here. I'm also going to use a fusion rifle a fair few times just because I do need to actually do that for a specific bounty. So there's another one right there. Let's take that guy out, and they should all die from the fire there. Okay, I don't think I got Wolfpack rounds from that one though, so it must not be a guaranteed chance. I thought it was guaranteed, but it doesn't look like it. So we'll just have to just kind of farm through this lost sector a couple of times. It's so simple to make your way through this place though that you're not going to really have too much trouble. And I'm obviously not going to show me doing this over and over again. Oh yeah, I forgot this guy over here is also an orange bar, so he should go down. Did not get a Wolfpack round from him, but I will keep trying, and I will report back to you once I have all 7. All right, managed to get all of the Wolfpack rounds that I need. It was about 1.5 runs through. I think I got the last one, like, maybe only a handful of enemies before the final boss room on the second go-around. So let's go head down here and talk to Shahan. You found the full set. Sorry, I cannot read. You found a full set, Shahan says, shaking his head in disbelief. The Gjallarhorn Reborn, I can't believe I'm going to be here for its second coming. But I'm getting way ahead of myself, he chuckles. You're going to need a targeting system, armored housing, the whole deal. And I think I can help you out with those. Shah rummages through a nearby pile of gear and pulls a tarnished housing unit from near the bottom. I had the New Lights training with this launcher before it got dry-fired one too many times and fell to pieces. The armor's still good, though. It withstood hundreds of training rounds without so much as a crack. This could be the base. Think of it like you're using the strength of the new Guardians. I don't know. I'm not great at that symbolism stuff. He hands the housing to you. Now we need to find a gunsmith as good as Faisal Crux to piece this together. He thinks to himself, then shrugs. Banshee? He offers. I know the Vanguard uses him for pretty much anything, but there's a reason for that. I'm sure he'd appreciate the chance to put his mark on the next generation of the Gjallarhorn too. Head on up to the tower, and I'll be waiting for you. I want to be there the first time you shoot that thing. All right, there we go. We got ourselves a rocket housing. So we need to go head off and see Banshee 44 back at the tower. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, let's head on over. He's just right here, and we're also going to probably grab some bounties while I do that. Let's see. Banshee spins a Wolfpack round on his workbench, then stops it with his palm. Perfectly balanced, he muses. Not surprised. Crux really knew how to put these things together. He looks up at you. I wouldn't have thought forging a new Gjallarhorn was possible, but it seems that every day the impossible gets a little closer. He looks over at the vaults of a few meters away, now brimming with the weapon stashes of countless Guardians. We lost a lot in the Red War. The Fallen probably tucked what tech they could... My gosh, I am really struggling to read these things today. The Fallen probably tucked what tech they could carry somewhere in the Cosmodrome. Check out the old Scav hangouts, maybe Exodus Garden. Banshee appears lost in thought for a moment. You know, part of wielding the Gjallarhorn is honoring those who didn't make it. Part should come from the armor of those we've lost. Yeah, and we've lost a lot lately. He digs around under his table for a moment, then comes up with a battered trigger mechanism. I pieced this together for a long time. Wow, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I am really struggling. I pieced this together a long time ago so I wouldn't forget some friends I had, he says, then looks down. Didn't work. Maybe it's time to let go of the past, but still honor it. He wraps the tables with his metal knuckles. Let's make this weapon one to remember. So, Exodus Garden, in case you weren't aware, that was literally the lost sector that I was already in, so that just means I'm going to have to head on back there and complete it. Again, I'm not going to show me doing that. I'm just going to finish it up and meet you at the end. And there we go. We got ourselves a targeting system. Return to Shahan's camp and use the tool chest in the hideout to assemble the reclaimed Gjallarhorn components. See, nothing too complicated. We're just kind of going back to the same places over and over again. You don't have to go here to farm the powerful fallen enemies. There are plenty of other places to do it. Honestly, there are certain public events that might be even more efficient if they happen to be running at the time. A good example of those would be the Ether or the Glimmer mining, public event. You'll get a lot. I mean, you get, I believe, 4 powerful enemies per skiff drop, or maybe it's 5. And then you get a whole bunch more when you're actually guarding the pile of Glimmer. So that can be a little bit more effective if there's actually an active public event for that instead. But no, we don't actually want to talk to him. Instead, we want to head on in here and reassemble it. Nearly complete Gjallarhorn. We'll talk to Shahan in just a second. Let me open up that chest really quickly. Got myself an engram. That's nice. All right, buddy.
Need something?
Shahan looks at the Gjallarhorn with an unrestrained awe. The weapon of heroes, he whispers. He pulls his eyes away from the gleaming barrel for a moment. Guess that makes you the hero, huh? He says with a grin. I knew it the first time I laid eyes on you, of course. I think most of the Guardians I see are heroes, and I'm usually right. I have one last thing for you, he says, patting his pockets. Hold it out, would you? You hold the Gjallarhorn steady, and Shah pulls something from a pouch on his belt, a small golden feather. I found this in the rubble of the old vaults after Gaul's attack. I've been holding on to it ever since, for hope, I guess. To remind me of the strength of the Guardians, and now he presses the gold feather into the winged wolf that adorns the Gjallarhorn. It fits into place with a satisfying click. Now I don't think I need a reminder, he says, then raises a fist into the sky, because the Guardians have the Gjallarhorn again. Now get out there and let the galaxy know the big guns are back. And there it is, the legendary Gjallarhorn. Let me switch off of Ace of Spades real quick, and let's put this guy on. Now, real quick, let's talk about this weapon for a moment. You're probably wondering, Gjallarhorn, wasn't that weapon like a big issue in Destiny? I mean, as much as it was beloved, it was also a big problem in Destiny 1 because of how unbelievably overpowered it was. It was so strong in that game that it kind of made every other weapon around it completely obsolete and made it that players who didn't actually have this weapon that for a long time could only be gotten by RNG means, it made players that didn't have it basically unusable in certain events like raids. Like, nobody would play with them if they didn't have this weapon. Well, here's the thing. Bungie was really smart with the way that they designed this weapon this time around and actually made it a very cooperative weapon. See here, real quick. Rounds fired split into tracking cluster missiles upon detonation. Nothing different from how it was in Destiny 1. However, there is a catch. Gain increased handling and reload speed when standing near allies. Firing this weapon also grants Wolfpack rounds to nearby allies wielding non-exotic rocket launchers. Here's the catch with Gjallarhorn. This rocket on its own is one of the weakest rockets in the entire game. Like, the Wolfpack rounds make up for it and make it still pretty darn strong, but the actual impact damage on this rocket is fairly awful, actually. Like, yeah, it's still a rocket launcher. It's still going to take out a lot of things. The Wolfpack rounds will finish off a lot around it. It's still a really strong weapon, but it's actually a lot weaker than your average legendary rocket. In fact, the base damage on this thing is worse than Two-Tailed Fox, for instance. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, what's the point of having it? Well, that's because of the other part where it says it gives legendary rockets Wolfpack rounds. Wolfpack rounds are what make this thing strong. If you fire off a rocket and it hits a target and pack rounds then becomes a buff that's active. When the legendary rockets fire off, their damage is increased exponentially due to also having those Wolfpack rounds. So what you do is when you have a big group of 6, for instance, and you're in a raid and you're all firing at a boss, one person is going to have Gjallarhorn out, they're going to fire off a rocket, and everyone else is going to have a different rocket, not Gjallarhorn, and they're going to use their rocket to get absolute maximum damage that's even stronger than the Gjallarhorn. This is how you maximize DPS, and this is how Gjallarhorn was balanced for Destiny 2 to make it a more cooperative weapon. It just benefits other rocket launchers around it while still being not too shabby itself. And I really like that change. Now, as far as its catalyst is concerned, and we are not going to be getting the catalyst here, just because of the method with which I have to do so, To get the Catalyst, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to continue to play your way through the 30th anniversary content, Dares of Eternity, things of that nature, and eventually you will unlock the Catalyst by fully leveling up, or at least the ability to start getting the Catalyst. To finish getting the Catalyst, we have to go back into the Grasp of Avarice dungeon, and we need to pick up 3 collectibles from chests that are scattered throughout the dungeon. Now, the good news is we don't have to complete the dungeon to do so. The first chest, I believe, is in the long jumping puzzle room, or I guess it's not a jumping puzzle, but the long jump before we get to Prisia, the big ogre. The second one, if I'm not mistaken, is... And I was mistaken, because actually the one before Prisia is the second one. Excuse me. The first one that you're going to get is actually in the one of the first rooms you go into once you drop down the hole at the beginning of the dungeon. It's that room where we killed all those hive before we started dropping into the area where all of the traps were. The thing is what you need to do is you need to have a burden of riches to open a chest, and there are going to be specific enemies that you're going to need to kill, and you have to carry your burden of riches all the way to the chest to then open it. The timer obviously being the issue. There are going to be specific enemies that are going to be set up throughout the dungeon to allow you to get this. The final one, and the most difficult one, is during the whole servitor cannon section. The chest you need to open is on the middle island, while the actual enemy you're going to grab the burdens from, the vandal that you're going to need to get them from, is like on the opposite end of the whole area. But the good news is once you get that done, you've opened all 3 chests for the Catalyst, you can just leave. You do not have to take out the final boss or anything. You can just do that immediately, go get it done. And the only boss you have to worry about taking down is Prisia, the big ogre. So that is how that works, but the Catalyst gives Gjallarhorn a second rocket in the chamber, much like it had in its original Destiny 1 state. It already has tracking, it already has the Wolfpack rounds. It's the Gjallarhorn you remember in spirit, but with a different function this time around to make it less oppressive, but to also make it still really darn good. Rocket with Gjallarhorn metas, like that whole DPS strategy is one of the best DPS strategies in the entire game for groups, and kind of always has been. It doesn't necessarily have to be for groups of 6, too. It's also good for groups of 3. It's just a nice thing to have a Gjallarhorn on standby so that you can do additional damage with these weapons that are already really, really darn strong. You pair them with some of the best DPS rocket launchers in the game, and you're going to probably be out-damaging anything you could possibly do, even with insane precision damage and really good aim. That's just how good Gjallarhorn is now, but again, it's not like so busted that everybody in the group has to have it. Only one needs to have it in your group, and given that it's actually not that hard to get your hands on and it has a dedicated method of doing so, I think that makes it all the better. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That is the 30th anniversary pack. Now, you're probably also wondering real quick, how do you get the Forerunner Catalyst? The Forerunner Catalyst also has to be gotten by basically ranking up with Banshee. It's actually the last reward that you get upon his track, which is going to allow you to then level up towards getting the Forerunner Catalyst. There's a couple more steps after that, like getting a certain number of points in Dares of Eternity. It's all Dares of Eternity based, but eventually you're going to be able to get it through that method. These are all things that are just incredibly time consuming, and you just have to kind of engage with the content a lot if you want to get the most out of it. I'm obviously not going to be doing that. I have basically shown the extent of the variety in Dares of Eternity in the 30th anniversary pack. I don't really need to show much more than I already have, so I'm pretty much content with what we've seen here. Next episode, guys, we are going to be jumping into the Witch Queen. I hope you're all looking forward to that. It's going to be a great one. It's actually, personally, my favorite expansion in Destiny up to this point, so I hope you're looking forward to it, and I will see you all in the next one.